A reading from the book of Genesis. The Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out from the earth the human beings I have created, people together with animals and creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. These are the descendants of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. And Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and put the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For my part, I am going to bring a flood of waters on the earth, to destroy from under heaven all flesh in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing, of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind, 2 of every kind shall come in to you to keep them alive. Also take with you every kind of food that is eaten and store it up, and it shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. God said, This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The word of the Lord.
Well, this story has been a favorite of Sunday school curriculums ever since there have been Sunday school curriculums. I imagine the first people that ever created such things said this has got to be right there in the first few pages along with the creation story. And it's found in our story Bibles, of course, from the ones that we hand out to little ones when they're baptized over here. Or next Sunday, if you come here, we're going to hand out beginner Bibles to our preschoolers, and it's front and center in those story Bibles too. There are wonderful songs that are created to remember the story. We had Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord at the first service. Maybe some of you remember that one. And it's a source of great jokes and riddles, which we're going to do now. So you're going to have to partner up with somebody and answer these 3 questions. Nobody all morning long has gotten all 3 answers. So let's see if you're smarter than this 9:45 crowd, okay? What animal, now don't overthink these, okay? Don't just kind of go with what's maybe the more obvious choice. What animal on the ark had the highest level of intelligence? What animal on the ark could no one not trust? And what kind of lights were on the ark? Okay, so talk about that with your partner, whoever's there by you. Okay, do you all have a possible answer for all three? Can we have the great reveal now, Gary? What animal on the ark had the highest level of intelligence? The giraffes, of course. What animal on the ark could no one not trust? The cheetah. And what kind of lights were on the ark? Floodlights. Anybody get 3 out of 3 here? John? All right. Or somebody over there too? Great. All right. Okay, the cheetah, that's my favorite. Well, the author Rudyard Kipling wrote, as you may remember, The Jungle Book that became a great movie thanks to Walt Disney, and then it became a DVD and a video that many of us bought to entertain our kids when they were little. He also wrote another lesser-known story called Letting the Jungle In. And it's a story of a group of people who went into the jungle in Africa and tried to create kind of a little community. And so they had to clear, of course, away much of the trees and the brush and so on, and build something to live in, and then brought some livestock along and created corrals for them to be in, and planted crops and so on. And for quite a while, everything was fine until the rainy years came. And then the jungle started to kind of claim back what had been taken away from it. And the vegetation grew and grew and grew, and the people couldn't keep ahead of it. And the wild animals, the lions and so on, came in from the jungle and attacked the livestock at night. What's interesting about this story is that Kipling wrote about people and a jungle and a clearing, but it really wasn't about a jungle at all. It was about human nature. Human nature. As a scholar later wrote, Kipling knew how near the jungle lies to the civilizations of man, and how thin is the veneer of civilization, and how deep the savagery of human beings can be. The jungle has a way of growing back and strangling the garden. And every now and then in our lives we see this happen, where suddenly something happens that harms civilization. This past Thursday, I think a lot of you remembered what had happened 13 years ago on September 11th. And that's maybe the classic example of the jungle invading civilization. And now we learn that even though that was relatively long ago, now there is a new threat to civilization, people wearing black hoods in Syria and Iraq and other places, called ISIS or ISIR. And Kipling was prophetic, I think, in saying that the jungle has a way of growing back and strangling the garden. And in this story today, which you all have heard before, really that's kind of the moral of it in a nutshell. How how the jungle can grow and strangle the garden. It's a story that we know the ending of pretty well, about the rainbow and the promise and all of that. And we're going to call that ending by a name. We'll call it the promise, which is what it is. But there's a couple of other chapters before that that lead up to it that maybe aren't as fun to think about, but they are necessary to deal with. And we're going to call those the problem and the passion. And so first of all, the problem. And the problem is laid out for you. It was laid out in the reading that was read a minute ago, where we read, "The Lord saw the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and every inclination of the thoughts of the hearts of people was only evil. And the Lord was sorry that he had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart." That's quite a statement. Because what in the world is going on here? You know, if we go back to the very first page of the Bible, of Genesis 1, you have this great start, to the world that ends in the words, "And God saw everything that he had made, and it was very good." Happy ending right there. And then in chapter 2, we have a little different version of the same story. But it's still a good story. But then in chapter 3, everything seems to go south. And you have this mysterious serpent that appears, right? Out of kind of nowhere. There's no story about how that thing was created. And we have the familiar story of Adam and Eve and the fruit and this serpent. What happens here? Well, the short answer is on the image on the right. That's what comes in to the garden. All of that stuff. All of that stuff. Sin is kind of the overarching word for it, but as you read page after page, it's all there. It's all there. And really what happens is relationships fall apart. Relationships between God and his created ones. Relationships between man and woman, where they blame each other. That's where that all started, by the way, that we still do. Well, it's your fault, dear. No, it's your fault. It starts in that garden. And then relationships between brothers breaks apart, between Cain and Abel. It all falls apart. So how do you get from that mess over to the rainbow? You need a bridge to cross that huge gap or chasm. And the bridge is in the shape of a heart full of passion for that creation. But that heart is really torn, and we heard that read in the lesson today. We heard that God's heart had sorrow in it and regret over creating these people. There was anger and judgment brimming up over how they had rejected him. But then there's this other side of it. There is mercy. There is compassion. There is a softening of this heart. And you hear it in the words to Noah, "I will establish a covenant with you, and you will come into the ark, you and your family." And you hear it toward creation. God is not interested in just wiping everything out and making every species extinct. But God says, "Of every living thing you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark." So this bridge between the problem and the promise is shaped like a heart, beating strong in God's heart. And you see this heart taking on this situation. And this heart is shown in its purest form on a Friday on a hill outside a city called Jerusalem on a cross. And there you see where this decision of God to figure out another way to deal with the mess of the world besides wiping it all out again in a flood, There you see this heart of God come up with the answer, that this God cannot let his people go, cannot let you go. And so Jesus comes and dies for the sin of the world. And so we then get to the promise, the part we know the best about, and how God creates this covenant with the world and with us. It's not a contract between equals by any means. It's sheer grace, sheer promise. If you read it carefully, there's nothing really expected of the people. God just says, I'm going to give you a world to live in, and animals to boot. And this covenant is the first of many that will come along. There'll be one with Abraham. Heard a little bit about that last week if you were here. There'll be one that you heard about in August with the whole people of Israel, the Ten Commandments. There'll be one with David. But the one we know the best is the one that we're going to taste in a little bit up on this altar. That's the new covenant. That's the one that this Noah covenant is pointing towards as the final answer to the problem of sin in the world. Now, this is all fine and good, but I want to kind of maybe give you a couple of handles to take home to help this story do you some good in your life. And I think there's these two things. Number one, that life is about starting all over again sometimes. And the second thing is that in life we live by faith within a community of faith. But that first one, just think about Noah when he puts that door down finally, and everybody says, oh, thank God we're getting out of this smelly ark, you know. And they put that door down, and everybody walks off. And for Noah, the world that he knew it is no longer there. Whatever relationships he had with neighbors, they're not there anymore. Whatever the town was he lived in, it's gone. He is starting all over again with his family. And you know, this happens in life, doesn't it? Where suddenly your life changes and the world that you knew of yesterday is no longer the case. You see this with people who lose a husband or a wife, and suddenly they are a widow. And that person that they ate a meal with across the table for maybe 50, 60 years isn't there anymore. They have to start all over again. Or you hear often in the paper or in just conversations about people in their, let's say, 50s who have given their life to a company for 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden somebody decides in a corporate office somewhere that we can get along without 10% of our workforce, and that person gets a pink slip. And they wonder, now what am I going to do? I'm too old, it feels, to go back to college or to some other training. Their world has ended as they knew it. Or we think about single parents who got married and promised to be faithful until death do them part. But we know sadly that sometimes it doesn't work out. And all of a sudden, someone must bring up 2 or 3 or more children by themselves. Then what? Life does that to us. All of a sudden, life changes. What do we do then? And one of the things we can do is live by faith in a group like this, a community of faith. Don't try to tough it out on our own, but live faithful lives. Hebrews chapter 11 in the New Testament has all kinds of people listed from the Bible that live by faith. One of them's Noah. That chapter starts out with these words, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." And in a verse or two later, it mentions how Noah, warned by God about events, respected the warning and built an ark to save his family. By this he became an heir to the righteousness that is in accordance with faith. When our world comes to an end, in whatever way that is, we still are people of faith. And you know, on those days, we need each other more than ever. This room may not look like an ark, but it really is in a lot of ways. Anybody here grew up in a Danish family? Are there any Danes in the room? Okay. If you were to go to Denmark and tour churches, you will see a church, you will see this very church on the right. And what is a trademark of Danish Lutheran churches are these beautiful ships that hang down from the ceiling of their sanctuaries. Another name for a sanctuary, an old Latin name, some of you may know this, is nave. N-A-V-E. Ever heard that? From which we, of course, get the word navy. Nave is an old word for ship. For ship. Why call a sanctuary a ship or a nave? Why do that? Well, if you look at that beautiful ceiling that ship is hanging from, it goes like this, doesn't it? And if you would turn that thing upside down, it would go like this, wouldn't it? Which is what? A ship. It's an upside down ship, is what these cathedrals in Europe are, particularly in Denmark. And we are part of this ark, or this boat. We go through a watery experience. Starts right over there, or maybe for some of you somewhere else. We call it baptism. The pastor on the day we do a baptism says the words, "The power of sin is put to death in this holy flood." And from that day forward, we're part of this ark, part of this ship, sailing along through life, hitting some storms now and then, other times enjoying some beautiful weather. But every time we gather, there are some of you for whom life is great, and for some life is terrible. But we gather together in this ark. We're all in this boat together. And we look to the one who is our captain, our pilot, to guide us to the safety of the shore. And his name, of course, is Jesus. So welcome to the ark, folks. Welcome to the ship. Welcome to the boat. I'm glad you're here today, and particularly when your life changes suddenly, come back to the boat for support and strength. Amen. And now we want to take a moment to present confirmation by